So thank you for checking out my podcast. And if you're wondering how I record my podcast, well, I actually use Anchor, which is a fantastic tool, free resource to use. But if you're new to podcasting like I have been, it really helps you to get started without worrying about editing and doing all the sort of hard work yourself. It does it all for you. If you haven't used it, it's probably the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain a few tips for you. It's free, which is fantastic. You don't have to pay anyone to edit your podcast or pay for software. There's loads of tools that allow you to record and edit the podcast right from your phone and computer. So again, you don't need any special equipment. So if you're looking to start a podcast and you're sort of on a budget, it's a perfect way of starting. Um, the best thing which I found, it helps to distribute your podcast for you, so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more hosts that um, listen to podcasts. The best thing for me was that, because trying to distribute it from another software was really confusing, and all the technical know-how which I don't have was done for me by Anchor. So you can just, once you click the podcast, say where you want it delivered to, and it will do all the work for you, which is fantastic. And also, you can make money from your podcast um, with no minimum listenership. So ads like you listen to on this one, this is an ad just talking about Anchor. You can get a little bit of commission from that, which is great. So extra bit of money in your pocket from doing what you love. And I have no problem doing this advert for Anchor, because ultimately it has allowed me to create a podcast. So if you're passionate about something, I'm going to talk about it, and it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So for me, I would recommend Anchor 100% if you're looking to start to do a podcast. And obviously then you can, elaborate and get better with your podcast, but you can just get better sound equipment. But all the software you need to do a podcast on the go or at home on a computer is all from Anchor. So for me, it's the best tool I've ever used when it comes to starting a podcast. So definitely, if you're interested in starting your own podcast, whether that is on health or fitness or travel, just pick something that you're passionate about and talk about it, then download the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello and welcome to the Plant Based Revolution podcast with your host, myself, Neil Damrell from My Lifestyle Coach. I'd like to thank you again for listening and taking your time of your precious day to spend with me on today's podcast. I hope you guys are enjoying the previous podcasts, and any feedback will be much appreciated. And like I said, please go over to iTunes and post a review on iTunes, and if you do post a review, I'll give you a shout out on the show. So today's topic I'm just going to discuss is how to transition to a plant-based diet. So I've been working recently with quite a few people, and it seems to be that a lot of people get so obsessed with having a perfect diet, and that if they suddenly go to a vegan diet, you can't have this, you can't have that, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves to sort of maintain a perfect diet when going to a vegan diet. So I've decided I'm vegan now, so I can't have any meat or dairy whatsoever. And if I'm out and about and there's no vegan options, maybe that puts stress on that person. Or you may even find it yourself. It might put a bit of stress on you when you're eating out and about. So I think it's important to try and have a bigger goal in mind in terms of transitioning to a more plant-based diet, as opposed to thinking, if you're going to go vegan, for example, and saying I can't have any meat or dairy ever again, and then putting that pressure on yourself. And food is there to be enjoyed, so you need to make sure that you have that good, healthy relationship with food as well, and not just feel like you're going out and about and restricting yourselves so much that it takes away all the enjoyment of eating. Because eating is a social thing. You want to share that with friends and family without feeling like you're under pressure to maintain this perfect lifestyle. So for me, transitioning to a plant-based diet was a progressive thing over the last 10 years. After spending a bit of time in Thailand, learned a lot about nutrition and felt that going to a plant-based diet was going to be better for me, but certainly hasn't been straightforward. I've grown up in the Western world, so there's always going to be, or there was always meat on the plate, steak, chicken, eggs, dairy all the time, ice cream. It's a natural progression in the Western world of sort of what you're brought up with within your family values. So, but like I've said before, if you go to my previous podcasts, I think it was podcast number 2, where I talked about my story and how I transitioned, and I kind of highlight the fact that I'm not a complete vegan. I feel it's actually unhealthy to say you're completely a vegan, paleo diet, whatever diet you want to follow, because I think as long as 80% of your diet is healthy, you can get away with 20% being unhealthy, in whatever unhealthy means to you, and having that good social relationship and healthy relationship with food, because that's just as important as eating well and maintaining a healthy diet that way. So so today I'm just going to give you some tips in terms of what I kind of focused on when I went into a plant-based diet and how it helped me, and hopefully this can help you going forward if you are looking to introduce more of a plant-based diet into your lifestyle, whether that's going more of a vegetarian route, vegan route, or just like myself, more of a flexitarian, where you enjoy a little bit of meat and dairy on the odd occasion, but predominantly most of your diet is based around plant-based sources, more vegan, vegetarian, for example. So hopefully these will be helpful, and feel free to just give us a shout out if you got any questions, and we'll help you along the way. So number one, first one you want to focus on is educating yourself. This was a big factor for me in terms of being in Thailand, learning all about nutrition during my detox retreat that I did there. It was a real good eye-opener. I was there for 4 weeks, did a lot of reading, and then that eventually led me to go to university. So I went and did a nutrition course, then went on and did a degree which covered aspects of nutrition and health and physical activity, and then I went and did a master's in nutrition. So I really kind of immersed myself in terms of learning as much as I could about nutrition in general, and then I could provide my own bias to what I would like to follow. So not necessarily saying this was the perfect way, but having that ability to criticize, research, and understand where they're coming from on one aspect and where others are coming from on the other aspect. So I would say do as much as reading as possible about the benefits of a vegan diet if you are looking to transition. There's loads of sources online now. There's some great videos and films that you can watch that really inspire you. If you go on Netflix, I'll definitely recommend watching Forks for Knives, Vegucated, Hungry for Change, Food Inc. All these things are really good films to watch to try and give you that added information about more of a plant-based diet. Some people do say it can be a little bit biased, but I think if you have an open mind and kind of just think, right, I can understand their point, and sometimes their point might be pushed in their direction because if they're funding it. But if you look at any other research, especially the dairy and meat industry, they're funding the research a lot of the time, so their research is going to be favoured in their favour in terms of the benefits towards them, so to encourage you to consume more dairy and meat, for example. So I think as long as you've got a good critical eye on it, keep your mind open to the experience, pick up the benefits, because there are benefits to not consuming or consuming meat and dairy, for example. So, but just in lower quantities, in my eyes. So look at both aspects and think how those benefits can benefit you in your own diet. So that's what you need to remember. It's all about you. You shouldn't have to follow this way of life because everyone else is following it.
if you want to have a bit of meat and dairy on the odd occasion, and you feel that fits in better with your lifestyle, your social circle, then do what's right for you rather than trying to be on the bandwagon, jump on a bandwagon and follow a trend as everyone else does. So that was point number one. So definitely educate yourself. That is a big factor. And you're always learning as well. So continually reading as I am, and looking at other research and information and documentaries. There's always a lot of stuff out there you can look at. Number two, so look at adding in more good stuff, and slowly the bad stuff will go away. So I mentioned this to a lot of people. We think, like I've said before, when you go to a vegan diet or you start maybe an exercise program, you just suddenly go, right, I'm just going to do this and I'm never going to do that again. Or if someone tried to stop smoking, they're going to stop smoking and never going to smoke again. But that puts so much pressure on them that all you think about is when you don't have to go for a run again, or when you can smoke again, or when you can start eating those foods again if you go on a restrictive diet. So it's probably the worst thing to do in terms of trying to add more benefits into your lifestyle and into your diet. So my advice is slowly start adding in more good stuff. So if you start replacing certain food groups, having more of a vegetarian meal once or twice a week, as opposed to what you'd normally have, maybe a meat-based meal, then slowly but surely you're starting to add in those healthier options, those plant-based options, and you start creating more of a taste for those meals, and it becomes more of a stable in terms of your lifestyle. And then slowly but surely you probably desire those heavier meat and egg and dairy-based meals, and your mindset will start to change in terms of focusing on what you're going to go out when you go food shopping, etc. But it will be a gradual process, and it has been for me over the last 10 years. Where when I go shopping, when I think over 10 years ago, when I was going shopping, I was going for steaks and having a steak for tea and stuff. Where now I don't even think about going to the meat and dairy aisles at all. Probably go for a bit of yogurt here and there, but in terms of looking for any meat and stuff, I'm always going for the pulses and the fruits and vegetables is what's filling up my basket. So think of it as a long-term solution rather than a short-term fix, and see if you can start adding in more of those good things. Try a few different food groups. Try quinoa, kale, flaxseed, coconut milk, almond milk, all these kind of different alternatives, and just slowly add them into your diet over a period of time, and slowly the heavy animal-based products will slowly drop to the wayside. Another point, number three, I'd say try and find some inspiring recipes. That was a big thing for me. I think when I started going on to a plant-based diet, and when I was at the actual detox retreat in Thailand, there was a really good vegan restaurant which really kind of give me my first taste of good healthy vegan food. So, and with that there was a free, or actually bought a recipe book when I was there on CD of all the recipes that I was having, and that sort of gave me the inspiration to try those kind of recipes when I got home and I started cooking a bit more. And I made some real bad mistakes when I was cooking, which I had to chuck away loads of food. But if you are new to cooking, keep trying, and honestly that's how you improve and you get more confident in the kitchen. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. We all make mistakes to start with. So I'd say just get in there and try a few recipes. If you're looking for inspiration on recipes, there are hundreds and thousands now of inspirational blogs, websites that you can access. I know when I first started it was more recipe books and there was less in terms of blog content, but now go on to Deliciously Ella. Her website's fantastic. There's loads of stuff there. Forks Over Knives got loads of recipes on their website as well. Even if you just type in vegan recipes or plant-based recipes in Google, there'll be hundreds of results that you could find. And start with some simple basic recipes to begin with, and then when you want to get more adventurous, as your confidence grows, then definitely look at trying a few other recipes for sure. Another tip for you, when you go shopping, that stock up on the produce that is healthy, in terms of like grains, oats, and rice. And these provide really good basis for healthy breakfast dishes, lunch dishes, and dinner dishes. So while you're slowly replacing the meat and dairy, you can go for more sort of carbohydrate based meals, but look at sort of having some lentils and green peas and chickpeas. Like I said, if you were making more of a curry or say a bean chili and taking away the chili con carne, if you're making a meat chili, so go for the bean chili. So you know, shopping is a great way to educate yourself as well, looking at the what's on the shelves, understanding what's in the product itself, read your ingredients, and try and keep it as simple as possible. So generally, if there's more than like 10 ingredients in a product, then it's probably been made in a factory, and there's probably a lot of sort of manufactured ingredients. So try and go for more of the basic ingredients, or if you want to go really basic, go for something of just one ingredient, which means you have to get everything that's pretty much back to basics and then cook every meal. So you're not buying any processed foods, which is the biggest transition that everybody goes and makes, really, actually, when going to more of a healthier diet. That's the first thing you do. You think about cutting out all your processed foods, get back to basics, cooking at home, in the kitchen, making your own recipes, choosing some inspiring recipes, and it's a great step to becoming healthier and following more of a plant-based diet as well, because you're in control of everything that you're consuming. This kind of goes on to another point number 5, which is like focus on the basics, which is kind of just focused on there, actually, keeping it simple. Simple things like just roasting veg up, and having more veg on the plate is really good. Even if you're still having a bit of meat, you can sort of cut down on how big your meat portion will be. Making smoothies is another great way of getting in loads of your 5 a day. You probably can get 3 of your 5 a day in one smoothie there. Banana, blueberries, a bit of spinach, peanut butter, blend it up with a bit of soy milk, lovely. All these are options that you can choose to try and increase the amount of intake of your vegetables and fruit for the day, which is going to have amazing health benefits for you. So like I mentioned on the last point, when going shopping, just keep it simple, back to basics, don't try and overcomplicate things, and you'll get there in the long term. So point number 6 would say take one day at a time. So like I've mentioned at the very start, we're trying to be perfect from the word go, and life isn't perfect. So try and have, what can you do today to have more of a plant-based diet? For me, a stable breakfast is always plant-based. Generally, my lunch is always plant-based. So my evening meal might be a bit plant-based, or might have a bit of fish. So if you think about, if you're building up a routine, maybe your breakfast could be quite consistent, and it's always going to be a plant-based meal. Or could it be a lunch? And slowly but surely that will become an ingrained habit, and you transition and try more plant-based meals of an evening or at lunchtime or with family, or when you go out, eating out. You might want to try the vegetarian option on the menu as opposed to what you'd normally pick on the menu. So take each day as it comes, and don't get overwhelmed with the pressures of yourself as trying to be a perfect diet. It is a learning process, one day at a time, and you will get there. And don't be too hard on yourself if you have a day where you have a lot of meat like you used to, because this is a transition. If you think about, if I was training for a marathon, I'm not going to go and run 26 miles the next day, but I need to slowly get my body used to running that little bit more, build up the miles. So the more you get used to eating a little bit more plant-based meals, you'll develop more of a taste for it, your body will adjust, and it will become more of a habit because your body's getting used to it, as opposed to just going straight in and cutting out meat and dairy completely. It's a bit of an extreme, and an extreme that generally a lot of people, I would say 80%, 90% of people would struggle to maintain. These challenges like Vegan January are great to build awareness around going to more of a plant-based diet, which is amazing for the planet, amazing for your health. But if you think about it long term, a lot of people, you just can't wait to get to the end of that 30 days and go back to normal. So rather than start at it, just like I said before, start adding in small bits at a time and slowly get there. But just take one day at a time. What can you do that's going to improve your health today? What food choices can you be consciously choosing to make them more plant-based, which are going to be more healthy for you as well? And final point, trying to eat whole foods most of the time. So when you go into more of a plant-based diet, you can potentially go to more processed vegetarian, vegan foods, in terms of like meat replacements. So the basic thing is I'm going to go cutting out chicken, so I'm going to go to some fake chicken or get some fake meat. And there are some great alternatives out there which do taste just as good, and they got low, the corn products are amazing, so low in saturated fat. So if you are transitioning, they're a great way of adding them in. But also think about, can you go for more, whole plant-based foods? For me, I don't like imitation, because if you were going to give up meat, just have meat, but just have less of it, rather than trying to replace it and have loads of this processed food. I think it's better to have more of lentils, beans, pulses, and try and go whole foods completely as they would in a natural form, as trying to just incorporate loads of processed foods. And if you are going to have meat and dairy, just go and enjoy it, but on a lesser occasion, less often. Should be a lot more. It'll be a better balance for you than it would be going into a load of processed foods, because a load of processed foods, regardless of whether they're vegan or not vegan, are still going to be an unhealthier choice compared to something that's in its natural state and not processed, regardless of whether that's vegan or vegan as well. So try and keep it natural, and you'll definitely be on the right side. And then also think about, if you are going completely, maybe look at having some supplementation. I always have vitamin B12, vitamin D, which is great for your health, and it's a really good vitamins to take, especially with vitamin B12, because that's it. You only get that from your meat and animal products, so go for that. And vitamin D, if you are working inside, even throughout the summer, we lack access to vitamin D, so try and get access through a vitamin D supplement if you are working indoors most of the day. It is a very beneficial thing to do, and I've noticed big benefits in the last year by taking a regular vitamin D supplement. So I hope those steps and that guide to transitioning into more of a plant-based diet has been helpful for you. Remember just to take each day as it comes, and don't be too hard on yourself. Educate yourself and be inspired by loads of recipes that you see online as well. I'm sure you'll get there eventually, but it's a marathon, not a sprint, and it's a lifestyle change, not a quick fix. So focus on embracing the plant-based revolution on a day-to-day basis, and remember, it is a journey. So just enjoy the journey. We get too hung up these days on a perfect destination, but the destination will never exist because you're always searching for more. So embrace the journey, enjoy the journey, and enjoy exploring the options you have following a plant-based diet. So thank you again, guys, for listening. Remember, head over to iTunes and leave us a review on iTunes. That'd be very much appreciated. And if you do leave us a review, I'll give you a shout out on the next podcast. And if you do have any questions, all the links where you can contact me through social media will be on the show notes. So feel free to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and give us a message if you like the content, and if you've got any questions, or if you've got any ideas or topics that you would like to cover, then maybe a question could turn into a podcast for you guys next time. Again, thank you very much for listening to the Plant-Based Revolution podcast, and we'll see you again soon.